Larry Feldman is probably the most amazing trainer that I've ever experienced in this business. I've been in the car business now for 35 years, and I've seen quite a few trainers. And a lot of them are pretty good. I mean, really, I get something out of all of them that I've seen, really. But Larry is in another class. I really mean that. His training is literally riveting. A little while back, I sat in on his first training that I ever sat in on. It was for new hires. I still remember, I'll never forget it. About 25 people in the room who'd never sold cars before. And he started to do his training. And after 2 hours, I was in the back of the room and I raised my hand meekly and Larry stopped what he was doing and said, yes. And I said, maybe we should take a break. And literally, I'll never forget it. All 25 people turned around, looked at me and went, well, okay. And they turned back to Larry. And Larry looked at me and go, okay. And he kept going for another 2 hours.
All right, so here we go. My name is Ian Nethercott. I'm the host of the AutoHub show, now in our 6th season. We have several hundred episodes, and we do shows all the time, but this is part of our new one-on-one series that started last year, so it's in season 2. And we have the pleasure of Nismo Nick, obviously a Nissan guy based on the subtle branding. So Nick, tell us more about sort of why auto, why you got into it, and what's your experience been so far?
Growing up, cars were always my thing. And I grew up in a time where I was in high school when Fast and Furious hit theaters. And so that kind of started my love affair for not just cars in general, but like doing things to cars and doing things with cars. And so as I grew up and got older, I would, modify my cars, and from, back in the day, it'd be simple exhaust and stuff like that. And now my builds are out of control. But, I'd always been around a car scene. I'd always loved Nissan. I've been Nissan only my entire life. And I was in the restaurant industry for many years. I built and managed fine wine programs. And yeah, and so I had moved to Phoenix to pursue a job opportunity within that field. And I walked into a Nissan dealership to buy a car. And I ended up talking to the general manager, and he was like, buddy, he's like, you love Nissans more than I've ever met anybody to love a car, and you know everything about it. He's like, why don't you work for Nissan? And I was like, I don't know what that means. He's like, just come sell cars. And I was like, I don't know, it's stressful. It stresses me out. And so that was 2019, and I decided new location, new job, and I started selling cars and very quickly figured out that I can do it very well. Very, very well. And then I quickly discovered that I'm really good at different business aspects and different things. And so I progressed, in a way that I've always been told by people that I'm kind of a conundrum, because there's so many things I can do, but you can't really put like a title on it. I don't fit into like a mold of we'll hire Nick for this. It's just, that's not who I am. I run around and I do many things. And so as it progressed, 2022, I started to decide that I wanted to do some social media. And I was like, I'm going to do some social media. I had spent a life watching every YouTuber, everything. And I don't think I was prepared for what had happened with that, but it has taken off in a very good way, a very humbling way. And a lot of that had to tie into the new Nissan Z when that was released for, I guess, the North American market was a big deal when it was launched here. And I kind of became famous for being the only dealership in the country not to mark them up. And yeah, so a typical Nissan dealership will sell between 8 and 15 Zs a year.
Okay.
And I think I sold 70 last year.
Wow.
I've shipped them to Hawaii, Florida, Maine, everywhere. They've gone everywhere, and so that kind of put me somewhere. And then I naturally ended up teaming up with Nismo to do some social media with them, and then it's progressed into catching the eye of some very influential people within the Nissan North America world.
Right.
And so now it's turned into this fantastic relationship of me having Zoom calls with decision makers within Nissan about what my opinion is on things that need to happen for the company or for product or for, X, Y, and Z. And it's absolutely wild that I have these conversations with these people and I'm a resource of information. It's just, as things happen, I mean, it went from, I remember getting my first free car part and I was like, I got a free car part. And now I had a whole car built. And now I've been at headquarters recently and I have all this, I have stuff coming the end of this year that's big. And so it's like being known for something that I just love naturally is so much fun. And it's just very, it's just like a dream come true. And it's very, very humbling to have people respect me or want to work with me or give me things based off of simply who I am. I'll never not be thankful or show gratitude for those things. So yeah, no. So I'm smack dab in the middle of a whole career right now.
Fantastic. It reminds me a lot of a gentleman, if you're not familiar with him, his name's George Scherr. He's a Greek guy in Toronto. He's a Toyota super fan, kind of like you're a Nissan fan. So he started doing videos a while ago on LinkedIn, I believe, and other platforms where his thing was, I'm going to do a video, but I'm going to do it in one take with no editing. And it was kind of a crazy idea. This was years ago now. I've had him on the show a few times. But what was funny about it was then he started to get interest from not only his local area, but also from Toyota corporate. And then they were like, oh, can you come out and talk to our marketing people about, I don't know, how to market Toyota. So it was kind of funny, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of my story. So when I started in the car business, I was a Honda person, not to beat up Nissan. Yep. I was a Honda person. That's where I learned to drive on, which was, I think, an 82 Accord or something. So when I started selling cars, I started selling Hondas. I'm a fan of cars in general anyway.
Yeah.
But what was interesting was I guess 2004, 2005, I was doing social media stuff on LinkedIn and elsewhere and got, the attention of Honda, good and bad. But I learned a lot by doing it because it then transitioned me into the working with dealer side of the business. And I did work for Nissan corporate. So I did work with dealers across the country. But I think the thing that people don't appreciate or don't understand as someone who likes cars, because I have a design background, I've been a fan of cars since I was very young, is that you can do something that you're interested in, that you love doing, that you're passionate about, and more importantly, you can make a good living at it. And I think that the opinion of the car business is, oh, this is a business that's not for me. It's not really what I want to do. It's something that people fall into. It's not really that respectable. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. I mean, I've been in the car business for 25 years, but my family's been in the business. My grandfather started gas stations for over 100 years. So it's an industry that I think people overlook because they're too focused on, I want to be a banker, or I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be a doctor, or I want to be this. And you can do all those things in the car business, but more importantly, you can do a lot more things because, in my opinion, and the reason I got in the business was I wanted to do it just like you to buy a Honda because I was a Honda person. And I was like, man, the bar here is really low. Like, the people selling me cars they're clowns. Like, I'm in sales. I could do better than this. So I sort of took that on as the gauntlet to be, very good at what I do. And I've had the opportunity over my career at Auto to interview some of the most successful car salespeople in North America, including a guy in Winnipeg, which was, I think, the #1 Honda salesman in Canada, which is still a lot of cars. But what interested me about that was, I think he was selling at that time about 110 a month. So I was crazy. How do you do that? Like, I'm curious, how does that happen? And what was interesting to me from someone who was very successful at selling cars as an individual, selling 25 to 40 a month, I was like, how do you move from that to 100? Like, how does that happen? And I did an interview with him, but I also did an article on LinkedIn years ago now. And people call me like, yeah, I don't believe you. It's like, he's in a small town called Winnipeg, not a big place, not Detroit, not LA. He thought about it and he said, okay, I sold 25. How do I sell 50? And once I sold 50, how do I sell 75? And once I sell 75, how do I sell 100? Then how do I sell 150? And it's a very step-by-step process, but more importantly, he built it like a real estate team. And that was really fascinating to me. So when you're selling Nissan, and for those who don't know Nissan, obviously there's two brands. There's Nissan and there's Infiniti, same company. But also there's a lot of enthusiast cars, whether it be the Godzilla or whether it be the Z or whether it be, there's a lot of cars that are people have a huge following. How do you get to that point where you're sort of dominating your market segment, not only in your local area, but also, North America wide, where you're saying, hey, you want a Z, I can ship it to you. Like, how does that happen versus a regular dealer who sells just in their city or in their state? Like, how do you get there?
Well, it was a unique thing with the Z. When they launched in 22, they came in the fall of 22, and they only had launched the Proto edition. So there were only 240 of these launch editions, and they were selling for wild money, wild money. And so at the time, there was a Facebook group with maybe 15,000 members, and I had posted that I wasn't going to mark up my Zs. And so I got two Protos. We sold them for sticker, and then we didn't get Zs for a while. There was a good 9, 10, 11 months of no inventory.
Yeah.
And because of that, most of the dealers everywhere would get a car and they'd mark it up like crazy. And people weren't buying them. And I did something pretty interesting. I started realizing that these dealers weren't selling their cars. So I was buying them from them.
Yeah.
So I would call the dealership and say, hey, I'm calling from Avondale Nissan. I'd like to do a dealer trade. I want to buy your Z from you. I see that it's been there for 80 days, whatever. Can I buy it? And then they sell it to me because it's sitting on their lot. And now I have the car and I sell it fairly. So I made some really good relationships. I probably worked with about 25 dealerships coast to coast buying inventory, to the point where there's one dealership in Missouri that I work with on a weekly basis of what's your inventory, what's my inventory, sharing cars.
Yeah.
Hang on, I think the video just
No, you're good.
there we go.
That's okay.
Yeah. So I mean, I would be the one that had the cars everybody wanted at this point, but I was also selling them fairly. Yeah. So I would literally post on Facebook, social media. I would say, hey, I've got a Everest White Performance with red interior, 6-speed manual available now. I can ship it to any state. Let's go. MSRP, tax title license, no dealer ads, And I would just get bombarded with messages. And so I did that for a year, and I became, when you get to a point where you're selling 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 cars, I'm not looking for the sale. They're coming to me.
Exactly.
My phone, my social media is constantly being tagged on Facebook, tagged on Instagram. We heard you're the one to get the Z from. We heard you're the one to get the Z from. And so now what's unique about that is now people hate buying cars. Okay? Yep. People hate car salesmen. People hate car salesmen because it's what it is. But when you are now in a situation where the customer is asking me to buy the car, I'm not doing anything besides simply facilitating the sale now because I don't have to do anything. You've now asked me to buy the car. I'm not asking you. So it's, when I train my salesman here, I talk about being a waiter. Oh, I said, do you want to be do you want to be sitting down at the table giving the order? Or do you want to be standing up, taking the order? Which one do you want? And it takes a lot of confidence to pick your role, but for me with the Z, I mean, I have the record of the highest Z sales for North America of last year, and that was huge for me. And that kind of put the radar on me for Nissan. Nissan wanted to know, how is someone in Arizona selling dozens and dozens of Zs while other people aren't, And so it became kind of unique to me. But what cracks me up about this whole thing is we are a society that lives on our phone. Yep. And we are scrolling and we are texting and we are posting and we are doing everything. And I was like, hey, I can do this, but I can talk about car sales in a way that isn't, I've never posted asking anybody to buy a car. I post, here's my inventory, here's how much they are, here's where I'm located. Any questions, message me. I never post, my name is Nick and I need to sell this, whatever. It's just, here you go, have at it. And no one else has come up with this idea. I don't get it. I'm in every Nissan Facebook group, period. I see everything. And there are, every now and then you'll see a salesman post something for sale, but it's just very much like hey, come buy a car from me. My name is whatever, and I really want to sell a car to you. And so it's such an untapped resource, which is just wild to me. And, you and I talk about being in the business, and I work, around a new generation of people who are in their early 20s.
Yeah.
And it's just a different breed. I want to walk in and make $10,000 a month, and I don't want to do much, and I just want to come in and leave, and that's it. And so the car business can be really great if you find your kind of little pocket of success. And I've kind of found that with the Nissan Z, and what that's done is it opens up so much more opportunity. It's because you and I both know that the average person's daily driver isn't a 2-seat sports car. They're going to need a truck or a Pathfinder or an Altima or another car. And so it just continues to snowball into more business. And now it's just, when you are able to gain the trust of the internet, or a customer, or even the company, when Nissan North America knows what I do is how I do it, and they approve of it, they like what I do, it becomes credible. So it's almost like it just works. But it can. I don't know if there's another Nissan version of me. I know. I mean, I know there's Honda Pro Jason. Jason's a great guy.
Yeah.
Jason is the Honda version of me. I have a really close friend named Tyson who is the Acura version of me.
Yeah.
I have not met anybody that is on my level of passion for Nissan. As where is it? I have like a Nissan tattoo on my arm. Like it's a life. So yeah, it could be done by other people, but it takes a unique person.
Well, it's funny you bring it up because I remember back in the day when Ford launched the new GT40, I think it was. I'm trying to remember when that. And the dealer had one. They had one car per location. So it came in, they showed it in the showroom, and then they put this big markup on it. And these people, yeah, I want to buy it. No, we're not selling it right now. And he's like, no, like I'll write a check. Like, I'll buy it right now. And they're like, no. And then fast forward like 18, 24 months later, they bought something else. They're like, yeah. These guys are painful. But the thing that was funny that you said, and I agree with you 100%, when I sold cars, I sold cars, I was a lease manager, I was an internet manager, and I remember the internet manager piece the most because I'd have people come in and they just have questions. I'd be like, listen, I'll explain to you how things are priced. Like, I'll explain it to you. I can explain what I'm going to do for you, whatever, this is what it is. And people would be shocked. They'd be like, what do you mean? It's like, well, like, it's not a mystery. You're like, this is what it is. It's what it costs. And this is why. And the thing that was funny is I remember years later, I used to sell a lot of hybrids because I knew a lot of cars, and people would come in when they wanted to talk about a hybrid. All the other salesmen were like running for the hills. Like, oh no, it's a hybrid person.
Yeah.
Talk to that person. But what was funny about it was the people just wanted advice from someone who knew what they were talking about. And the car at Honda at the time was the S2000, which was a car that I thoroughly enjoyed. I actually owned one, a great car. I didn't buy a new one because I didn't have the kind of budget. But what was funny about that car was that was another car where people were like, oh, I'm scared to drive it. I'm scared to look at it. It's like, it's just a car, man. But it's more importantly is that person who buys a car every 4 or 5, maybe as long as 10 years, they want to know they're buying it from someone who knows something about the car, but more importantly, is passionate about it. And I used to get a lot of ribbing from people I work with because my competitive product was Mazda, Nissan, Toyota. So when someone had come in who looked at a Toyota, I took it as an onslaught. I'd be like, yeah, you're looking at a Corolla. Okay. Why?
Yeah. You're right.
Why would you buy the most boring car that you could? Like, why would you choose that?
It's
Like,
an appliance, yeah.
but it's boring. Like, why?
Oh, yeah.
So it was just kind of funny. But there's another guy that I saw a video. I think I saw a video the other day. So they're a Mercedes dealer. I'm not sure where they're located. Somewhere in the U.S. But it's the tagline is bow ties and Mercedes Benz. And the video that really struck me was the customer came in and wanted to meet the guy in the video, which I thought was really interesting. So he said something to you. Let's go ahead.
He's interesting because he does like live negotiations on TikTok. He actually, like, you watch a car deal live, like the things that you're not supposed to see in the tower. You know, he posts live, which is cool. The whole being known in person thing is very new for me. And it's funny because I have a personality where I'm really good with people, and I do a lot of things. I do a lot of events. I go a lot of places. I'm really good at like talking, but I've had people want to meet me based off of social media. I've had people send me customized things that match my car based off of social media. I've had people come to Avondale Nissan simply to buy their car here because they've seen me online. And it's just, I was at SEMA last year and I met, I don't want to call them fans because that's weird to me, but like I met people that wanted to meet me because they knew I was at SEMA, and it's just very humbling that people think that I'm cool because I talk about like the things that I love. And then they look at me like a resource, you know, especially with the New Z platform. I've built one, and so I get a lot of people, hey, what exhaust should I run? People are spending money based off of what I tell them I think they should do, which is just, it's weird. It's fun. It's fun, but it's like not weird bad. It's just very humbling to know that. I'll give you an example. There is someone who I was a big fan of for many years. He works. He's a drifter and an off-roader and a racer for. He's got his own racing, and then he's done stuff with Nissan, obviously, his whole career. And I was a big fan of his, and I met him as a fan, huge fan. And now I'm friends with him. We worked together on we worked on a project together. We've hung out together, and it's so weird for me to be like with this person and be like, oh, it's okay to hang out with this guy because it's like we do the same stuff and we think the same way. It's weird as you progress in your career how things come full circle, and I'm just enjoying every moment of it. It is wonderful. So
yeah, I mean, I interview people. And some of the stuff is random. So I had a guy on LinkedIn for years. He said, hey, this friend of mine's kid is a car racer. And he's racing in NASCAR, and then he's going to be racing in the Indy Series. And he wanted to know, do you know anybody in Canada who wanted to sponsor him? And I said, yeah, I have a few automotive connections. I'm happy to help him. He goes, well, would you be open to doing a show about car racing? And he goes, oh, yeah. And so I talked, and this kid's like in his 20s. He's a Mexican American. I think he's out of Texas. Anyway, so I happen to know another guy. You probably know Steve Dinan from the 80s, who was chipping BMWs. But anyway, he has a new company out of, I think they're based out of San Francisco. I'm not sure. So I had the two guys on. One's an actual car racer. The other one actually built cars for car racers, and they have racing teams. And the thing that was funny was I had no idea how that was going to go. Like, I just didn't know. Like, I didn't know what this kid was like. I knew he was a car racer, but I wasn't sure. I didn't know what my buddy at Dinan's new shop was going to do. But ironically, there was this synergy between them because they were both car people from different sides of the industry. But more importantly, there might be a long-term opportunity for this young kid once he gets into the F1 side or aspirational to that level to work with this other gentleman. And there's a lady in California that's her name is Scherr Porsche Car Darkman. So she has a Porsche wrecking yard that she's actually selling out the inventory. I think she's closing the business. But she's one of these people that just has a weird dichotomy. She has a Porsche business around performance parts for wrecked Porsches, which is just bizarre. Like the mix of things.
Yeah.
But when you meet people, the more people you meet in automotive who are enthusiasts, the more common threads there are. Because these people, they like one brand or the other. They're like things that go fast. But the thing that was fascinating about this car racing show that I did was just talking to people about speed and how fast they've driven and what that meant to them. And I
Yeah.
thought it was really interesting because I would never get in a race car and drive 280 miles an hour around a course. That's not me, but I
Yeah.
appreciate the tenacity to do that. Like, I'm just like, wow, like that's a little crazy. And it was funny because a question came up during the show about gender and car racing, and he says, "Yeah, we're all strapping into a coffin. Like the body parts don't matter." And I was like,
Yep.
interesting. I thought it was a very interesting take. So as you've moved up in the industry, and I did do SEMA, I think it was 2 years ago. It was a little overwhelming. I'll
Oh
probably
yeah. SEMA's very overwhelming.
I made the mistake of doing used car week. A couple of days later, I did SEMA. I've never been there before, so it was a little bit crazy.
Wild.
What advice do you have for people who haven't been to SEMA? I'm just curious.
You can't see everything. I go for the whole week, and the first couple of days usually you're filming.
Yeah.
You get all your content. You do all that, and then it opens up to the public, and it's wild.
Yeah.
Comfortable shoes. Stay hydrated. Bring extra batteries. I mean, it is a nonstop, and it's huge. I mean, you walk miles and miles just in a day and you just literally cannot see everything. You got to focus on what your objective of what you want to do there. Do you want to network? Because there's a ton of great networking classes and seminars that you can go to and meet people. Do you just want to see the cars? There's thousands of cars. You really have to be aware of everything that's going on so you can focus on what you want to do. SEMA is going to be a little different for me this year, and I am very excited and very nervous. So, SEMA is going to be a very interesting career moment for me. So, we'll see how that all plays out. But yeah, SEMA is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I went as a media person. I did some interviews and brought some gear for the show, but I was overwhelmed because I'd never been. And the gauntlet to get a media pass was a little crazy, even more crazy than NADA for all of the shows in auto that I've been to. But I definitely will be back. I'll be better prepared next time. I'll probably pace myself a little differently because 2.5 days was too much.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Do it. Next time I'll have to bring more help. But yeah, I agree with you. You've got to have a game plan. Like when I do NADA, for those who haven't been to NADA, it's usually between 40 and 60,000 new car dealers in one place. This year was a little off, so weather. That show is overwhelming, but it's manageable because of the scale of it. So I believe SEMA, when I went, had about 1.6 million square feet of space, non-Apex, plus outdoor space. So it was a crazy place. You just got to be cognizant of that, right?
Yeah,
so
it's a really
that's the key thing. So,
it's a good networking place. I've met some really good connections at SEMA. You meet the people that you need to know in your industry are all there. So it's a really good hub for that. The last 3 years, I've gone with Nissan in more of a social media capacity. This year, I actually have a build in SEMA that has a lot of meaning to me, and it's going to do some fantastic things for some press for Nissan. So I'm very nervous because now I'm going to be the one talking about the build and not the one talking about other people's builds. It's going to be very surreal and strange. So we'll see. Hopefully, it all turns out the way it should. So
what's your advice to a young kid or not so young kid at heart who's looking to get in the auto industry and says, I don't know, man. I mean, they're almost as hated as lawyers, almost as hated as politicians. What's your advice to that person?
don't do it if you aren't going to give it 100%. You got to give it 100%. You have to be honest. You have to. I love everybody I work with, but I work in a box in my mind. I work. I'm very focused on my goal and myself. That you kind of have to do that. There's a lot of noise. You need to just really focus on your goals. I the first thing I ask anybody when I meet them, when it comes to either a hiring situation or a new hire, I will say, what's your passion? What are you working for? Why are you here? What does this paycheck mean to you? You know what I mean? Like what is that one thing? And I get answers like, well, I got to support my family, or hey, I really love. I had one person blatantly say, hey, I like nice things. I want to work hard and make good money because I like nice things. And I was like, yeah, hey, if that's your motivation, that's your motivation. Mine is different. I think that what's interesting for me is I've turned this career into a life, and I don't think everybody's going to do that. But I think for someone young, honesty is huge. Thank yous are huge. You don't know everything. I don't know everything. Ask for help. Never. I would rather have a customer ask a question that the salesman said, you know what, I actually don't know, let me find out, than lie or guess. Use your resources. I mean, you got to really, if you really want to get into automotive, and I actually had this conversation with someone who's getting ready to graduate college, and he's like, Nick, what do I do? You focus on the things that make you happy. You focus on the things that excite you. I don't work. I don't feel like I work. I come to a building where I talk about things that I love all day. I leave, I drive the things that I love, and then I go show them on the weekends. It's like my whole life is just one big fun thing. And so when you're able to have that in a career path, whether you're a chef or a dentist or in the auto industry, you'll be very successful. The auto industry, as you and I know, is very difficult.
Oh yeah.
It's very difficult. I'm gonna listen. The U.S. car market is struggling. Nissan is where it is, and we have it just a little bit worse than most people. I'm just gonna say that, but that makes me, super optimistic. I was at headquarters, and a lot of the people were saying, "Hey, Nick, like, how are you always so positive about Nissan?" I'm like, "Cause A, look at the history.
Yeah.
B, my favorite thing about the company right now, and this might be controversial, but it's my favorite thing, is that we're here. We're low. I love it. You know why? Because all we can do is go up. We are at the bottom, and people are going to count us out, and they're trying to. And every day there's another article, and I love it. I love it all because when we come back, and there are many fun things coming. When we come back as a company, and it turns into people want to buy Nissans again. That's where I'm going to be like, see, it wasn't so bad. I mean, it's not fun being low, but it's so exciting because I know that the next few steps are going to be so much fun for the company, and I just look forward to it. So,
Nissan's been there before, so it's not the first time.
this is not the first time.
What's your thought on Honda and Nissan? What's your thought on Musk and Nissan, which seems to be a latest thing? Like, what's your thought about those two companies if they were to get together? Like, do you think the synergy between Honda and Nissan is similar? I mean, what do you think?
From what I understand, and I won't make this. Actually, I can make it factual. There was a statement issued. The Honda Nissan thing's over. That has been announced that was not going to be pursued. And from what I understand, and I'll cautiously state this because I think this is kind of what it was. Is Honda kind of wanted to make Nissan like a secondary company, Like if all else fails, just shut Nissan down and we'll be fine, And I don't think Nissan was really about that. The whole Tesla thing, here's my take. I would have loved the Honda thing because I would have loved the platform sharing availability. I would have loved having an expansion of models and an expansion of powertrains. That would have been great because we could benefit from that. We need money. We need product, But we don't just need product that's just like, oh, look, it's a new Sentra that's been redone again. It's like, no, this is the new Sentra, and now it's this, that, and the other thing, and now it has something that no one else has, So, with the Tesla thing, it's like, I understand the electric car play, but I mean, you and I and most people that watch this know that the electric car market is not fun. And so I think we all know that hybrids are the future. But hey, if we get an influx of money, and we can take that money and develop things that are great and people want to buy, that's fantastic. I don't think that having a partner is a bad thing. It just needs to be the right one.
Oh yeah, I mean, I always go back to, what was it, Stellantis and Mercedes. I mean, that couldn't have been a worse.
Chrysler Crossfire.
It was like, what are you guys doing? Like, the cultures couldn't have been more at loggerheads. But the funny thing, if you bring up electric cars, I'm doing a show on Monday, which will be a drag-out fight between the fanboys and the people against them. But I live in Calgary, which is like, if you're driving an electric car here, like, good luck to you, man. I mean, it's an old place. But I've been a fan of electric cars since the beginning. I just haven't bought one because the numbers never made sense to me. Like, I'm looking at it going, a hybrid is a good buy. When I sold hybrids, they were more expensive. But when you look at electric, the math just doesn't work. Now, I'm not saying it won't eventually, but when I look at electric cars as an item, and I remember at SEMA a couple years ago, someone had taken original Gullwing Mercedes from whatever it was, the 50s, and made it electric. And I'm like, why, dude? Like, what are you doing? But I think electric, when you look at the big brands around the world have invested, and I heard Ford is investing in something, I think Rivian today, that I was reading. And I hear the Cobra, they're going to be building Cobras again in the US, which is kind of interesting, as a repro, which I thought was kind of interesting. But the funniest, from strictly a car enthusiast point of view, that I saw today was a V8 powered smart car that was an Alfa Romeo that they did as a parts car for a one-off that they're selling right now. It's a V8, so it's like the size of those old.
Wasn't it like I think I saw that article. Wasn't it the Aston Martin?
Yeah, it's the Aston Martin smart car with a V8 in it.
Yeah, that's wild.
I was like, that's hilarious. That's got to be the funniest item I've ever seen for sale. Like, what were they thinking on that one? But yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, electric isn't interesting. Like, look at that new Dodge Charger with the sound coming out the back. Really? Like, why?
So I'll give you my factual input on electric cars. I've had 3, and they've all been Nissan. I've had 3 Nissan Arias. Okay. So and this statement covers all electric cars. When I leased these were employee leases. Okay.
Yeah.
So I leased a $65,000 platinum all-wheel drive, fully loaded electric Aria. It was a 1-year lease. My payment was $173 a month. Okay, I used that car to commute back and forth to work, and that's what it was. That was its only purpose. I have gasoline cars. This was a commuter car. This was an appliance for me. Okay, lease ended. Turned in the lease. Okay, the car got bought at auction and got put at a dealership in Tucson. The asking price was $27,999. So that car lost near $40,000 in value in 1 year and 14,000 miles. Now that's not. Now I don't want everybody being like, "Oh, it's because it's a Nissan." No, it's just the electric car. Every electric car is a brick in the ocean. You look at Hummer. We had a customer here who had a Hummer EV, and he bought it when you could not get a Hummer EV, and he had to find out very painfully that he was $80,000 upside down, and you and I know. That you can't just hide 80 grand in an Altima. No. You know that doesn't happen. So I love electric cars for the purpose that they can serve as commuter options, and that's where it ends. There's no enthusiasm. There's no electric car modding market. Like, there's just no. I mean, Tesla people have their body kits and their wheels and their aero and all their carbon fiber stuff. That's cool, but you can't I want to get in a car. I want to hear the engine. I want to smell it. I want all of that stuff. So it's just I'm not a huge fan, but I get the purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I see electric cars in the short term, to your point, being a used car market opportunity. I think that you're going to see Tesla with their lease program, just like General Motors back in the day, take a bath on these cars as they show back up, and you're going to be able to lease them cheap. But the problem I've always had, and I drove a Tesla when they first had dealers when they didn't have sales process. They just threw you the keys, go drive it. It was a Lotus Elise, which was a more interesting car, by the way. But anyway, what surprised me about the brand, and it's not about the car per se, but it just doesn't. There's no attraction to me. There's no connection. It's an appliance. It's a phone. It's got all these screens. It's fine, but I like cars because of the passion I have for everything automotive. I'm interested. If I'm not, like why? Like why? Like that's why I use that Corolla example. I sold a lot of Honda Civics because I worked at a Honda store, and my biggest competitor really was Toyota or Mazda. Like those were the two cars. And people looking at Toyota were easy targets because it's like you want to drive a vanilla ice cream cone. They're like, what? Like that's what that is, dude. Believe it or not.
Hyundai and Kia are you know, they take a lot of market from us. You know, I'll give you an example. You know, Nissan typically, between all the dealers in the valley, not Arizona, just in the Phoenix, there's I believe 9 Nissan dealerships. We'll sell between 600 and 800 Nissans a month.
Yeah.
And Hyundai Kia usually at least double that, for sure, at least double, if not triple. So that's where, you know, it's not just your big three anymore. It's like you've got your Honda, your Toyota, your Hyundai, your Kia. You know, the people are making good cars now. I mean, if you look at the Chevy, I think it's the Trailblazer, the little one. It was up it sold 200,000 units last year.
Yeah,
it was wild. It was up like 40%, which is huge.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, the car market is wild, but once you get that one home run, you know, it's good for Nissan needs one home run, you know?
Yeah, I always use the example of Genesis because I was looking at a Genesis SUV and I was also looking at a used Porsche Macan, which I'd always wanted to own one. So I owned one temporarily and then I realized it wasn't the car for me, but whatever. So I'm comparing these two cars, one new, one used, and that was the hot car at the time, sort of in that luxury segment. And the thing that really kind of shocked me about it, not to beat up Hyundai or Genesis, was there was so much technology going on in the car that it was distracting. Like there was so much going on. You were like, this isn't a car anymore, it's a cell phone. And it's a nice looking car and it's well executed and it's fine, whatever. But then you go to, other brands, whether it be German or other, whether it be Honda or Nissan or Toyota or whatever. And I always use the example of the new Land Rover. Like, I don't think they did a good job on that car. Like, it's just boring. Like, what are you doing there? So it's still got to be edgy, in my opinion. Right?
The Lexus GX does that for me. Everybody was like super excited for the new Lexus GX, and I see them in person. I'm just like, you know, we're in this like automotive style bubble, which I get, and it happens every decade. There's a bubble of style, but like, I am so sick of every car having one long taillight and one long headlight. And that's what it is. And they all have it. And, you know, I can't lie. We have it on a couple of our things too. And it's just like, it's funny. I watched a video about car design and how, like, the late 90s, 2000s, everything was the same. Everything had this, like, certain.
I have a social media post for you. You sell cars for a living.
Yeah.
Take some of your employees, take a photo of the front of 20 different cars from brands. The front of it. Just the front of the car, head on, take the logos off. Put a survey out there and go, okay, what car is this? And see if anyone can actually tell you what it is without the logo. So there's so many similarities to your point. I mean, I owned a Lexus NX for a while. Well-executed car, but the most boring SUV you could drive. Like, just boring as the day is long. Like, nicely executed, very luxurious car, but just boring. And
that's the Jeep Compass for me.
It's just, who came up with this? And it's funny because when you look at what Jaguar's done recently, not to beat them up, but they've taken what used to be a sexy car brand and just obliterated it. So it's going to be interesting, I think, the next 5 years in car design, because you have the hybrid thing accelerating, the PHEV things accelerating, electric dying on the vine pretty much. And then you're going to have enthusiasts coming back saying, hey, I just want a nice car. Like, I don't care about any of this crap. I want something that's great to drive with no technology, that just I can drive it. And I think that's where it's going to get real interesting.
What's funny is I had a customer recently say to me, he's like, Nick, I want a car that looks like an electric car that's not an electric car. And I'm like, what do you? Because he wants that clean front end with no grill, and it's like he wants those styling cues that only electric cars get away with because you can there's no function there in the front, and so it's just interesting. I look at some of the car designs, and I'm just like, I remember when the Juke came out in 2011, and everybody got upset because it was like blinker, headlight, fog light.
Yeah.
And we were like the first automaker in the US. I'm 90% sure we were the first one that did that like tiered lighting system where the headlight was separate from the blinker, which was separate from the fog. I mean, it was just this whole design. And then I think the Jeep Cherokee did it next. And now if you look at every car design, everybody's got the running lights recessed into the fender and the hood, and then you've got your headlight, and then you've got everything is just, even now Hyundai does it with the tail lights. You've got this big gigantic light bar on the Kona, and then you have these two like thrown on tail lights that look like they were glued on, and it's like it's so weird to see like the 25 Murano has that like headlight split running light, and I'm just like, we did this 14 years ago, and now it's on trend. It was terrible when we did it first, but now everybody's doing it. So
I think that's the parts maker's fault. Like, I think the parts makers say, listen, you're going to buy 100,000 taillights. Here's the style. Here's what we'll do that. And I think what's unfortunate, and maybe it's just the fact that cars have become more of an appliance for a lot of people. The car designers, they can't get away from the bean counter. Like, it's not like I want to design a car that's great because that's what I want to be known for, like the old GTO, to pick a random car, or other cars historically, be it the original Z or the original NSX, those kind of cars where people were taking risks. And then you look at it today, and it's like, line up 5 SUVs. They look exactly the same. Yeah. Like BMW X5 looks like a Jeep Grand Cherokee, looks like this, looks like that. I mean, the back lighting looks the same, the logos. I mean, that's why I years ago when I sold cars, I wanted to do that exercise. I wanted to just take a picture and have a flip book and say, okay, identify this car. And I'll be like, what is it? Like, it's on the back, but identify it. And people wouldn't know. You look the same.
And I'll say this is controversial, I'm sure, but I'll say this. My favorite car right now, anytime I travel, I rent the same thing. I rent a Cybertruck. I love the Cybertruck. I'm not talking company or ownership. I'm simply talking car. I love the Cybertruck because it is absolutely wild. It is driving a triangle that everybody stares at, and it is hilarious. It is just the most unique, hilarious thing to drive. And what's even crazier is the cars that I drive on a daily basis are loud and wrapped and stand out like a sore thumb. But the Cybertruck is just, it is just so hilarious to drive. And I love it because it doesn't look like anything else.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the DeLorean and the Aztec. Those are the two cars that come to mind. But I remember there was a car reviewer that came out when it came out, and he's like, you can argue with it, pro and con, but it's memorable. And that's what you got to be. But the thing that's I think is funny about it recently is the fact that parts are flying off now, which I thought was really interesting, just because it's kind of like this urban assault sci-fi vehicle, and people they're just trying so hard to poke a hole in it. And I just think it's an interesting design. I mean, actually, Tesla just lost their senior designer, so it'll be interesting to see who fills in. And that's why I think Hyundai and Kia have come up in the world, because they hired the old Audi designer. That's why. So he's been able to make the design. Yeah.
Well, the Genesis brand is beautiful.
No, yeah. I mean, that SUV is a nice looking car, but drive it, you'll be confused. Like, I was very confused. And I'm a car person, so I figure stuff out, but I was like, what is all this crap? Like, I don't need a 50-inch TV on the entire dash of the car. Like, I just don't need that.
I think because I'm techie, I adapted pretty quickly, but I can see, like, the average person having no clue how to operate that car.
Well, I mean, it was like the dial for the transmission was just wacky. Like, it did all
for that. Yeah.
It was wacky. Yeah. And I'm sure you'd get used to it. Anyway, I appreciate the time today. If you're looking for a Nissan, how do they reach out to you? How do they find you? Obviously, every Nissan group.
Yeah, Nissan, Instagram is good for me. Nismo Nick official on Instagram, and then Nick Loves Nissan YouTube. But the Instagram is pretty popular, and I answer everything. I don't leave anybody unread. Everybody gets a message. So I mean, I am on it. So
who's the craziest Nissan fan, boy or girl, global? Is that you?
me. Oh yeah, me. I have a bedroom in my house dedicated to Nissan memorabilia.
Rock and roll.
Yeah.
So do you have some Datsun stuff?
I do. Oh, I do.
I sold a Datsun hat that I bought in California to someone at a garage sale that I had. It was like an old school one with the white plastic with the thing, and I had Datsun.
Oh, nice. Yep.
And she was like all over it. I thought it was funny. Anyway, I appreciate the time. And if you're looking for Nissan or you want Nissan advice, including advice about electric cars, obviously, Nismo Nick's the person to talk to. If you're going to be at SEMA, are you going to be at a booth for that, or?
We are finalizing placement right now. I am going to be either in the booth or we're talking about putting it in its own area by itself as an entry to one of the halls, because it's a very it will be a very fun off-roading vehicle that people will love to see, and that's what I'll say.
Fantastic. And if you haven't been to SEMA, pace yourself. That's my advice. It was
bring water. Good
overwhelming.
Yeah.
And if you're a car person, it's like, I think the only way I can explain it is the most custom cars I've ever seen in one place in my life.
Correct.
It was insane.
Correct.
Like total insane.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, it's awesome. And
outdoor concert style crazy car things.
Oh, yeah.
That's before they opened it to the public, which I'm sure is even crazier.
Oh, yeah. It's even wilder when the public joins.
Thanks very much. Have yourself a great day and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.